Real quick before the video begins, I want to give a shout out to Johnny Vector. He makes a lot of cool videos, with more recent ones focusing on obscure or less known Sonic characters and their histories, as well as a few iceberg videos. He just released the Sonic 1 iceberg and I'm actually in it. So please check out the video and subscribe to Johnny if you like what you see. Now on to the actual video. As of late, the Metroid community has basically been booming, with new people taking interest in the series ever since Metroid Dread was announced. And with the game being right around the corner, I thought now would be the best time to talk about one particularly contentious entry, Metroid II. Here's the thing. Because a lot of people are starting to get into Metroid, especially the 2D games in preparation for Dread, there's been a lot of talk about which games you absolutely must play and which ones you should skip out on. There aren't too many to choose from, seeing that Dread is only the 5th entry in the series, but I think the widespread consensus seems to be that you should skip out on the first 2 entries, and instead play their remakes. For the most part, I agree. These games are the 2 oldest ones, and they can be really difficult and obtuse for new players, in large part because they have no map, and the remakes smooth out or eliminate nearly all the issues in the 8-bit originals. Now, I have no problem recommending Metroid Zero Mission as a complete replacement of Metroid 1, since I agree with pretty much all the common complaints about the original NES game. But I feel like Metroid 2 kinda gets lumped in with Metroid 1 as being a confusing, near unplayable mess, when I think Metroid 2 made legitimate strides to improve on the gameplay of its predecessor. Another thing about Metroid 2 is that, unlike the original Metroid, you have more than one remake to actually choose from. Metroid Samus Returns was released in 2017, but a year prior there was a fan-made remake called AM2R, which was infamously shut down by Nintendo, though of course you can still find it online. While AM2R isn't official, it's still an incredibly faithful remake and honestly on par with the real thing. This video is not going to be a comparison between Samus Returns and AM2R because, for one, there's more than enough arguing on the internet about which game is better, or which game deserves your support. I don't see the point in splitting hairs over which game did this or that better because it's extremely subjective, and also, I'm just happy we got 2 very good remakes of the same game. If you are interested in playing them, the shortest summary is that AM2R is more faithful to the original game, while still adding new stuff like in Zero Mission. Samus Returns is much more of a reimagining, but it definitely feels like a more modern Metroid, and many of its mechanics are being carried over into Dread. I find that, throughout all this discussion about the remakes, the original Metroid 2 is once again overshadowed. Like, the reason AM2R stands for Another Metroid 2 Remake is because there were apparently tons of other smaller efforts to remake Metroid 2 after Zero Mission was released, none of which came to fruition. It seemed that everyone agreed that this game was in dire need of being remade. My stance on this is that all 3 games, including the original, are well worth experiencing. Metroid 2 had a lot of improvements compared to its predecessor. In Metroid 1, rooms would often repeat, and there was no indication of where to go. Enemies would just swarm you, and the bosses were absolute dog shit. I'm sorry. Even with the modern day internet, it's still a chore to try and play through. Metroid 2, despite being in monochrome, does a much better job at making screens feel distinct. Likewise, the Metroid shells scattered throughout the planet almost serve as breadcrumbs pointing you where to go. You can still get lost in Metroid 2, but I find that backtracking in this game will mostly get your bearings straight. Again, I have to emphasize that the jump in level design between Metroid 1 to Metroid 2 is like night and day. Another underrated aspect is honestly the visual storytelling. Super Metroid is often cited as a masterful example of this, since after the intro cutscene there's no text whatsoever, but the narrative is conveyed purely through the environment. But honestly, I think that started in Metroid 2. I already mentioned the discarded Metroid shells, but I want to highlight the ending of the game. Spoilers inbound. Throughout the game, you've clawed your way into the depths of SR-388 and fought every sort of Metroid variation. Metroids themselves only appear like this when they're not in their native habitat, so on this planet you get to see all the different stages they go through in their life cycle. You've just finished dealing with the last Omega Metroid when you see an egg. The last Metroid? Then, suddenly, the counter jumps from 1 to 9. The tension in this part is through the roof. You then encounter classic, brain-sucking Metroids. Better hope you brought the Ice Beam. The cramped screen size is ever present throughout the whole game, and it keeps you on your toes. You wouldn't want to accidentally run into something that could end up killing you, and it's exemplified in this part of the game especially. When you reach the room before the Queen Metroid, your heart is probably beating faster than normal. This Queen Metroid is the biggest, baddest thing on the planet, and since it's the source of all the Metroids you've fought up to this point, it's your ultimate goal to kill it. It truly feels like the culmination of your entire conquest through this planet, and it's definitely a step up from just a giant brain in a jar. Come to think of it, I guess the theme of motherhood is kinda consistent in the Metroid series. In Metroid 1 you fight Mother Brain, but that thing is a mother in name only. This thing is literally the mother of all Metroids, which I think is significant in more ways than one. Obviously the Queen Metroid is significant because, well, it's the most powerful Metroid, the series' namesake, the thing Samus was sent out to defeat in the first place. But the less obvious significance here has to do with Samus herself. Now I know this bit of lore first appeared in a Nintendo Power comic, and was later expanded upon in a 2002 Metroid manga, and whether it's canon or not is often debated. It's the Ridley killed Samus's parents thing. The truncated version is that Ridley attacked the Earth colony K2L, leaving only one survivor. That survivor, a young Samus, would grow up to be trained by the Chozo, defeat Ridley multiple times, and become the savior of the galaxy. Coincidentally, Metroid II was one of the only games in the series not to feature Ridley. I'm sure you can see the parallels here. Samus, with better intentions than Ridley of course, just went through the entire Metroid homeworld and wiped out every Metroid in existence. Metroids were created for specific purposes, but eventually fell into evil hands, but it's not like that was their fault. They're like mosquitoes, except 1,000 times more deadly. Life would be better if we could exterminate them, but they're just animals trying to survive on instinct. But after blasting her way through the Metroid species, ending with the Queen, Samus comes across the egg mentioned earlier, the last Metroid. I would like to believe that Samus saw a bit of herself in this hatchling, the sole survivor of a massacre that claimed everything in its home. And as such, she doesn't kill it, she shows it mercy. The baby imprints on her and allows Samus to escape the planet, in peace. And this is still one of the only Metroid games without some sort of bombastic escape sequence at any point. It ends on a hopeful note, conveyed entirely through the details in the gameplay and music. Pray for true peace in space. It sets up nicely for the beginning of Super Metroid as well. The last Metroid is in captivity. The galaxy is at peace. So, not bad for a Game Boy game that turns 30 years old soon. I feel like Metroid is particularly known for storytelling like this, and how impactful it can be without dialogue. Super Metroid is often lauded for this, but again, I think it really started in Metroid II. A few more things before the video ends. One is that dialogue in a Metroid game is not a bad thing. I think Fusion proved that you can have a text-heavy Metroid game and still deliver a great, yet different, experience. The other thing is, and spoilers for Samus Returns here, they fucked up the ending in the 3DS version. I could go on and on about it, but I have no way of getting 3DS footage, so I'll leave it at, they insert a whole 3-phase Ridley fight that's so out of place with the tone established in the original, and it also makes no sense as a lead-in to Super Metroid. Like, does Samus just leave Ridley on SR-388, drop the Metroid off at Ceres Station, and then say, "Oh shit, Ridley followed me here and took the Metroid, how could I not see this coming?" I should reiterate that just because I hate the 3DS version's ending doesn't mean I hate the whole game, and it's just another reason why you should give all 3 versions of Metroid 2 a chance. And I think that's all I have to say. If you want to hear me ramble about more video game stuff, be sure to subscribe. Please also buy Metroid Dread when it comes out, or I'll be forced to start making genetic enhancements to mosquitoes and take over the United States. I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.